Okay, here we are. We've got everything back together. Uh, Went ahead and fired up the machine, let it idle for a while, and checked the oil. It was on the full mark after just putting the filter in and filling it, and then after running it for a while, it took almost another quart to bring it back up to full. Might add one of these little screw-down hose clamp tools is really handy for putting the tank back on since there's no shut-off. You can't really fit this tool through that rubber boot I showed you earlier on top of the fuel pump. So clamp that off, stick a rubber cork in the hose, and then you can pull it on up when you take the tank up. Anyway, since we've got that buttoned up, we're going to be dealing with the brakes. So I've got the machine back on my jack, and I pulled the front wheels off. Brake fluid is really subject to contamination, and it doesn't take much to cause corrosion, that sort of stuff in the system. So before we take the master cylinder cover off, I've taken some Windex and a clean towel and cleaned that up, and I've also washed my hands. Then we get around to the front brakes here. These two marks, when they line up, it's an indication that your brake pads are worn out. Of course, once you've got the tire off, you can look from this side, and you can see you've got quite a bit of pad material remaining there, so they're in pretty good shape. Then under this cap here is the bleeder valve with a 10mm nut, and what you can do is pull the cap off the top there, have an assistant squeeze the brake lever, put a little hose on that, crack it open while the assistant is squeezing the brake lever, and let brake fluid out until the brake lever gets close to the bar. Then close it, let your assistant get another bite, and squeeze it and let fluid out as the bar goes down, and so on. Time consuming and really kind of a pain. I've got one of these, which I highly recommend. It's not an expensive tool. I think they're $30, $35, something like that. It's a Mighty Vac hand pump. Comes with all sorts of fittings and hoses of different sizes, and a little catch bottle there. Basically, I'll just put that on my bleeder valve, crack it open, and pump it and suck it dry. Go around and do the same thing to the other one, get all the old fluid out of it. Then I'll fill the master cylinder, and you'll find using this, it's of course designed for larger vehicles, that it takes a little bit of finesse to not totally suck the system dry when you're not meaning to. So we'll use it gently when we're pulling the fresh fluid in, so as not to draw air back in the system by sucking the reservoir dry. One other thing with the brakes, the calipers here and their mounting bracket ride on these two bolts that are lubricated so that the caliper can move around to compensate for wear on the pads. You want to make sure these rubber boots are in good shape. And if they're not, we'd end up replacing them and probably putting in some fresh grease in there too. But these are in good shape. Okay, we've got that all done. Two things I meant to mention earlier. One is that brake fluid eats paint, so you want to be really careful with it. That's one of the things I like about using a vacuum pump. You can see I haven't lost a drop on anything, not a drop on the floor, not on the brake caliper, on nothing. The other thing I wanted to mention is be sure and use the proper brake fluid. This calls for .4. .4 brake fluid basically is a higher performance version of .3. .4 rather has a higher boiling point, and it's important that you don't use .3 in a vehicle that calls for .4. So if the brake fluid vaporizes and boils, that vapor doesn't compress, and so all of a sudden you have no brakes. The other thing is .5 brake fluid is completely different chemistry. It's a basically it's used in Harley Davidsons, I think is just about it, and it cannot be mixed with a system that takes .3 or .4. So be aware of that. .5 is not a better version of .4. The other thing I'd mention, in the inside the master cylinder cover here, there's a little casting around the inside of the reservoir, and that's the full line. So once you're done sucking the new fluid in and getting all the air out, you want to fill it to that level. With the Mighty Vac there, it's pretty simple to get the air out. Just hold the hose in kind of an upright position, and pretty soon you'll see fluid and no bubbles, and takes just a second with that thing to absolutely positively get all the air out. Okay, here's a shot of the rear brake. This is just ahead of the front final drive, or rear differential. This has one rear disc basically on that drive shaft. I've noticed shoving it around that it looks like the top pin here is seized up, and also turning one of the rear wheels, it seems there's a lot of drag on the brake. So I'm going to end up pulling this bolt here and this bolt on the bottom that secure the caliper to its mounting bracket, and then we'll pull the brake caliper out of the way, and that'll expose the pads. We'll take those off, and then these the bracket that the caliper bolts to is bolted to the rear end housing with two bolts there, and we'll pull it out. That'll get us access to these two mounting pins there, that we can see that they're moving smoothly, not seized up, that kind of thing. Okay, what we've got here is the caliper mounting bracket. You can see the bottom guide pin there moves smoothly. The top one, however, is bound up, so we'll end up pulling this rubber boot off and pushing hard on this copper bushing to get it out of there, so we can grease it and clean it up. That's probably why I'm dealing with this squeaking and the brake sticking. Okay, got that apart. You can see this bushing. Maybe you can see it there. It has a scar right in the middle of it. Might be able to buff that out and smooth it up a little bit. We'll put some moly grease on it and put it back in here with these boots and make sure it runs smoothly. If it doesn't, I guess maybe I can replace this bushing. Okay, lighting isn't the greatest here, but we've got this caliper bracket bolted back on. It's 30 Newton meters for these two bolts with lots of anti-seize. The manual actually suggests replacing those, and both the caliper pins here now slide freely. I've also taken some brake cleaner and soaked a clean rag and spun the disc there to get that cleaned up. We've got little anti-rattle clips which fit onto the caliper bracket both above and below the pads. This helps you put the in right side up there, which clip into place. And then I've also cleaned up the brake pads. The plain one goes in the back there, and the one with the little squeaker there, if you can see it, goes in the forward position, designed to chirp when the pads get too thin. And then we'll see if we can get the stay there, you booger. See if we can get the caliper back on these. There we go. I have to move that the way to make sure I've got that in there all the way, and then it'll be a matter of putting in the 2 bolts that go into the caliper pins. The long one goes into the top here, and the short one goes down in the bottom. I'll hit those with Loctite too, and then they're 32 Newton meters. Then we'll go ahead and change out the brake fluid.